Good evening, everybody. Katrina Ellis here from Financial Wellness Academy. Thank you for joining me. I'm losing my words. It's the end of a long week. Thank you for joining me this evening on workshop three. Ignore the slide that says workshop one. Yeah, and tonight we're going to be covering the 5 pillars to financial wellness. So there's quite a bit to this. I think I explained earlier in the week when I looked back on my journey from a place of financial desperation to where I'm now with definitely a better sense of financial wellness. These were the key things that were was essential. They were key parts of my journey. And so that's become the center point of everything that I teach now to clients in groups and one-to-one programs. So I'm going to share with you, obviously it's outside the possibility, the scope of tonight's call to cover it in depth, but I'll just give you a flavor for it as to what I feel are some really key pieces to it and how to get it right. Okay. So let me just do a quick tech check to make sure we're all good. Yeah, all seems okay. So let me crack on. So we are here. And so recap then, what have we covered in the week? We have covered kind of the most important part in call one on Monday around the vision and understanding what financial wellness means to you specifically, but there's no right or wrong on it. It's very specific and very individual to you. And that's really important. And it's as important to have clarity on where that is, because unless you have an idea where your endpoint is, then you have no idea. It becomes very difficult as to how to get there, to make decisions to get there. And then when you actually arrive at that point, how do you know if you don't know what it looks like? And to bear in mind that whatever it is you design or envision now is always subject to change. Mine has changed multiple times. It's not set in stone. So just go for it and just have a bash, whether it's on a walk, in the shower, and whatever kind of chilled out space works best for you to get that really clear vision as to what that looks like for you, because that's really, really key starting point to the whole thing. And then we covered on Wednesday around the 5 mistakes, which were around lack of diversification, delegating the responsibility for your financial wellness to somebody else, giving up when you hit challenges, and really having a strong mindset to counteract that, and then also focusing more so on the short term as opposed to long term, and looking at both. And then having a disrespectful or unhealthy relationship with money. So they were the main mistakes, then the ones I most commonly see trip people up, and many of which cause issues for me at various stages, without a doubt. So let's get cracking into the financial pillars to financial wellness. And the first one, you will not be surprised to hear me bleating on about this one again. And it was the first piece that I shared with you on Monday. And there's a very good reason as to why it's pillar one, because we have to have that sight. You see those see the image which depicts, seeing what is that point in the future. We don't know how far in the future it's going to be that you're envisioning, and it doesn't matter. That as long as it is something that motivates and inspires you and encourages you to take action from where you are right now to where you want to be. So having clarity on that is so essential, and I hope that that message has gotten through. I think I've said it enough times, because it really is, and it's such a simple step. It costs nothing for you to do, but it really, the impact that has is so important. So if the only thing that you do from this week is to get clarity on that, then to me that's a win. Okay, and that's my idea of a baby step, getting clarity on something like that, because that really will set the tone for everything that comes. And you'll be surprised when you have really amazing clarity on what that looks like, what things happen as a result from that. Because every time I do my vision, run it again, I try to do it at least twice a year. Strange things happen after I do it with the guided meditation I have, and every time I do it, really bizarre coincidences or not, serendipity events happen, and I don't think it's a coincidence that happens. So I would encourage you. The only one thing you do from this week is that, get clarity on that. Then that's an amazing place, amazing action to have taken. Okay, so that's the first pillar around financial wellness, and hugely important, and very importantly, for a reason being put in pillar number 1 position. Okay. So pillar number 2 then is around creating a healthy relationship with money. So this is one mentioned in reverse in the mistakes that we covered on Wednesday. So many people struggle with that relationship with money, and this is a very complex piece because it can be very superficial, something that can be changed quite quickly with a conversation or me making a point or something like that, and then whatever thread can be unraveled very quickly. Or some of your relationship with money can go much, much deeper, back to our primary caregivers who have instilled, consciously or unconsciously, habits to us. They have modeled various forms of financial wellness or not, and they can be empowering or disempowering. So those ones that are instilled for a long time can be can be difficult to uninstall, shall we say, or habits to break. So that one really, I think, relies on a couple of things. It's, I suppose, depending on your take on things as to how you potentially approach dealing with a limiting belief like that, whether it's kind of a psychological approach that you take, or whether it's using something kind of an alternative tool like ETF, which is emotional freedom technique. If you Google that on YouTube, there's amazing videos from several people. There's one guy, I can't think of his name, he's got brown hair and glasses, and he's one of the most popular people with it, on around limiting beliefs around money. And there's all sorts of free videos that you can access on that. And it's a tapping technique that on the belief that beliefs that we store in cell memory, and by using this tapping technique, which is is ages old, can release that energy and shift it for us. And I've had some interesting experiences with it. I think it's, there's no downside to exploring something like that, because again, it's something free, easy, so everybody can access. So have a play around with it, and you'll be amazed when you start kind of opening Pandora's box on this, that you discover all sorts of things. And the one thing I'd say about this is that I see a lot of people using this, using their upbringing or using limiting beliefs that they have as excuses or reasons not to do any work on their financial wellness. Oh, but I'm not clever, I could never really do money like you do money, or I don't have access to that kind of cash, or I didn't come from a wealthy background. And to me, all of those statements I've just made are poppycock. You can come up with every reason under the sun. I could have had a million reasons as to why and never did a thing. And I would still be sitting in financial desperation had I not taken action. But the pain for me was so intense, and I really felt into it and saw how it was going to play out if I did nothing. So to me, inaction was just not an option. But I do see and hear it on a regular basis, people using limiting beliefs as something that really disempowers them. So the choice is yours. You can use it as, look at it as a challenge and part of your life, to heal those kind of beliefs, but never use them as an excuse to bow out and go, well, it's not for me. I don't believe that that's really the case for anybody. Most certainly, some of us have had more challenging upbringings and have limiting beliefs that really are quite disabling. But for the vast majority of us, we have the wherewithal to push through them and to do something about them, to deal with them, and to not allow them to hold ourselves back. And what I found with this is, I'm a massive fan of personal development. I've just signed up to another 9-month program myself with a mentor to guide me through going deeper on some of this kind of stuff. Because I completed earlier this year one 9-month program with the same mentor, and the difference I found in doing my own inner work in my business and in my personal life was absolutely off the scale. So I'm a massive believer in that. Now, take it with a pinch of salt. If it's not your bag, that's fine. But I really believe that a healthy relationship with money, comes from how we do us internally, and what we thoughts become things. So whatever's going on in here does materialize in your life, in my opinion. And you can choose to ignore that, and if that's not a belief of yours, then that's fine also. But in my experience, it has played a huge role. So And one thing, a really easy thing to help start changing your relationship with money, and the simple thing I did mention earlier in the week, is around gratitude. And this is a practice that I brought in pretty early, and as I kind of made that transition to a better sense of financial wellness early on, was running through a list of things that I was grateful for in my life before I go to sleep, because that put me into a really great state of mind as I drifted off to sleep. And then, sometimes interesting dreams would follow, and it flooded my body with happy hormones. So, if I'd had a tough day with the kids or whatever, then my last moments before I drifted off to sleep were really positive ones. And that's a really nice way. Personally, it was the way that worked best for me. Some people prefer to do it first thing in the morning so that they kind of start their day going with that kind of vibe through the day. And there's no perfect place for it. It's about integrating it in your routine in whatever way works for you. Some people might do it on their commute, they might do it in their car. It doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong on it, but it is a very powerful technique or habit to incorporate into your life. So that's one, maybe food for thought. And again, it's one that we all have access to. Okay, so that's the second one. Pillar three is a whopper, and there's a reason why it's right kind of in the center of the five. There's a lot to this, and the best way I can maybe give a synopsis of it is that three kind of main places to it. There are what I would refer to as annual or ad hoc savings. So a big problem for me in 2015 was, we have our monthly budget. We knew all the monthly bills that were coming out, but then you get something like car tax or car insurance or house insurance, and which were the way we paid them, they were annual, because I refused to pay them on a monthly basis and pay extra. So I would prefer to pay them. But each time one of those hit, it caused huge pain. And it was stressful, and it was something that really was bringing me personally a lot of stress about these expenses. So when I started to make changes, one very simple thing I did was I wrote down a list of all these ad hoc expenses and I totted them up. So let's say, for sake of ease, they came to £1,200. And I divided that £1,200 by 12 months in the year. And so the figure, just for ease of calculation, was £100 per month. So I knew that if I wanted to have all these ad hoc expenses covered, each month I needed to be putting away £100. So I had a certain account designated just for those ad hoc expenses. And each month a standing order would go out from the main account and swoop that 100 across in each month. Now, obviously, it took a few months, it took 12 months to get that full amount there. But we were able to manage meantime. But that one thing, and it's still something I do to this day. The list of the ad hoc expenses in the beginning was very short. It was basically absolute essentials, kind of legal requirements. Now my ad hoc expenses is much bigger. I include kids' birthdays, our birthdays. I include travel. I include all the kids' classes that I don't pay monthly. We include, say, Christmas, Mother's Days, Father's Days, kids' clothes, car repairs, anything that comes out, replacement tech, replacement car, anything that I need to spend money on that is not monthly. And that made a massive difference to me. And my stress level immediately went zoop on that, because I knew I could sleep at night if, a bill came in. I had it provided for, and that was an amazing win, and it was it's simple solution. So that's that piece. The other piece is around emergency savings. So this would be a separate pot again. I would use for things that you can't foresee. So all those ad hoc expenses, they're going to come, and roughly when. But emergency, something, the boiler blows up or the washing machine gives up the ghost. You need a replacement. So I would have a kitty in there to replace things like that. And typically, you can have a number of months of your essential expenses. So, say for me, what would make me feel comfortable would be if I had 3 months of our monthly expenses in there, in that account, to cover whatever eventualities. When we sat down to do this exercise as a couple, my comfort zone was 3 months. My husband's was 9. So we went with a larger number, because 3 months is gonna make me feel fine, but he's still going to be freaking out because he doesn't have 6 extra months. So we went with the 9 and then we're both happy. And that's again, it's around peace of mind. The next piece, we covered a little bit of it on the Q&A last night about retirement. It's a massive piece and it's often made out to be super complicated. My thoughts on it are you can make it as simple or as complex as you like. I like to keep it simple. You know, what you have, what kind of retirement you want to back to that visioning. What do you think that retirement is going to cost you? What provision do you already have? And if there's a gap, then as it is, as there will be for most people, what do you do to address that gap? None of those solutions are overnight, but once you face the challenge, you assess it, you understand what the difference is, and then you come up with a plan. Is it that simple? Well, it can be. It's not. Once you plant that seed, then you'll find opportunities come up that you didn't maybe expect. You'll find that really things start to come together in a way you haven't quite foreseen, about that same concept of designing, deciding, envisioning what it looks like, and then giving up the nitty gritty on how that's actually going to come to play. And I've had that experience numerous times, and it's very, very effective each time. So give that one a go on that. So that's savings. But like I said, this pillar is huge. So that's just kind of a flavor of it. Um, Fourth pillar is around protection, and it's one that often people overlook. Vast majority of people are one way or the other. They're either totally uninsured or very uninsured, underinsured, or they're very overinsured. There are very few people who have the protection needs to meet actually what they need. And the job of vast majority, there are some very ethical insurance companies out there who will give you exactly what you need and not upsell you a whole pile of stuff that you really don't need. But there's lots that, that's how they make their money, to sell insurance. And that's fine, they're in business, okay. But it's the responsibility, in my opinion, lies on the individual to make sure that they're educated about what it is they actually need. So that's one really to be aware of, and I would include in that protection space as well things like making sure that your will is being provided for, your powers of attorney, because so many times we've seen happen no will in place, and the chaos and the stress and the often heartache that can cause, and distress to those left behind. So taking that time to put that will in place, it doesn't necessarily need to cost a huge amount of money. I work with a lady, I think a single will costs about £130. A joint might be 200, something in that region. So not a huge amount of money to put it in place, but the stress and chaos and the stress that saves when that's in place and it's done and dusted. I fully understand the idea that it is not a pleasant thing to do, because you don't want to, especially when you've got kids, to envisage that time when you might not be around, especially if they're small. That's a difficult conversation, and it's hard to go there. I've done it myself, and I know what it feels like, and I did put it off for a while. But the thought of it not being in place and our wishes not being followed caused more stress. And so to me, it was a case of rip the band-aid off and just get it done. So I would include that, the will and LPAs, under the protection piece. Okay. So the last piece then, the last pillar is around debt. And often it's a word that really strikes fear into people's heart. And to me, like most things, it's got polarity. It has a positive and a negative. In the negative space, I would put consumer debt. So if you have credit card debt, overdrafts, personal loans, car loans, those kind of things, they rob you of your of money unnecessarily for things that do not appreciate in your life. I would put mortgage debt in the neutral space. Obviously you're paying that money instead of paying rent. So, and you're obviously building up equity over time in your home. But it's essentially, I often hear people say, their home is an asset. Unless it's earning you money, no, it's not, because it's not an asset in the sense that I believe an asset. An asset earns you money, and unless you're doing something like I'm doing in this area, where the asset is actually generating income, your home is not an asset. I would put it in the neutral space. It is definitely potentially something down the line, or if you decide to pull the equity out and go do something with that, then that's a different story. But for the vast majority of us, our mortgage, I would put in the neutral space of debt. Then there's the good debt. And there is such a thing for those of you who maybe have had poor relationships with debt. There is leverage debt or good debt. So that's the kind of debt like I described in the buy-to-let properties. So having, we currently have 7 and this space. So we've eight places or assets which generate an income, which have debt on them, but they generate more income than the debt costs. So if your debt costs, let's say £500 a month to repay whatever it is you owe, but you're earning £1,000 from that asset that you own, then that's good debt because you're positive in the positive of £500. So that's good debt, and that's something that's a really great thing to have in your life. It is important with debt to have a healthy relationship with it. And that kind of goes back to pillar 2. So those two do go a little bit hand in hand. So it's, it's really important when you look at the pillars, and we've covered quite a bit of information in quite a short space of time. So I fully appreciate that. But, the recording is there as well. It'll go out in the morning with the links to it. So you can listen back to it to let that sort of sink through. There is a huge amount of information in it. I would say maybe pick out one pillar. And like I've said all the way through, if you've got pillar 1 sorted, that has to be your first one to deal with. If you've got that sorted, then feel into the other 4 that I talk through and see which one really appeals to you to take some action with. So maybe there's one in particular that's causing you pain right now and you want to do something about it, then just pick that one and have a think about what it is that you could do to increase your financial wellness in that specific pillar. Because to look at all of them and to think, start to feel that overwhelm of, where do I start? The whole thing is such a mess. That's, that will result in you being paralyzed and making no further actions. And the whole objective of this is to get you moving, to get you taking those little baby steps, and to be, a week after, to spend Financial Wellness Week, taking some of those actions, whether it's 1, 2 things, it doesn't matter. It's 1 or 2 things that you hadn't done before starting this. And that's the whole objective around this. Okay. It's about improving how you think about money. It's about sharing my story with you so that you can see, somebody fairly ordinary, maybe similar background to you, and parts you can resonate in particular with, that it boils down to very simple things. And a lot of what I've shared with you during the week. So pick that one pillar and maybe decide to dream about it tonight, or decide to think about it in the shower as to what it is you could do to really make some traction on that. Yeah. So that's pretty much it on the 5 pillars. I will have a catch-up session tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So I'm just going to kind of do a synopsis. For quite often what happens is some people can't make the weekly sessions because of work commitments, child commitments, etc. And so they'll listen into one of the catch-up calls. So I will be doing the one tomorrow at 10 a.m. But what I will be doing, maybe for those of you who've been through the week, you might want maybe a day off from listening to me, or you might want to listen to it concisely. So you can join me tomorrow at 10 a.m. You're very welcome. Or as usual, the recording will go out so you can listen back at a time that maybe suits you better. Okay. So thank you again for joining me this evening. I really appreciate you taking the time out on a Friday evening. And Strictly has started again. So I'm going to run in and catch the rest of that. So I hope you've gotten some value from our time this evening. Please do let me know if there's any questions in particular. You have my email, so just drop me an email. I'd really love to hear about what pillar in particular resonated with you, and even better, what action you're going to take from listening to pillars tonight, because that's what it's all about. You can listen to this type of information till the cows come home, but unless you actually couple it with that action, nothing will change, unfortunately. So decide what that action is and share it with me, please. I would love to hear about what it is that what action you're taking. So thank you again. Have a great weekend. And for those of you on the catch up, I will see you tomorrow.